Hi everyone, welcome to Excel with UT. So in today's session, we are going to talk about the logical functions, and we are going to start with the most common logical functions, that is the if function. So if function is the most common logical function that we have in Excel, and it is also a very basic logical function. And we are also going to see some other different variants of the if function as well in this video. So let's jump to the worksheet here. So first let's try to understand what is the structure of the if function, how does it work. So if function is basically a logical test. The formula basically does a logical test, and based on the logical test it will give you two results. One where the logical test passes, and one where the logical test fails. Now when the logical test passes, what is the value that you want at the pass point, and when the logical test fails, what is the value that you want when the logical test fails. So this is the complete structure of if function, and just remember we are only testing one single condition here. So that's the if function, the structure of the if function. How does it work? So let's jump on to the data here. So I've taken few examples, I've taken few conditions, I've taken few logical tests here, and we're trying to see what are the results that we can get here. So let's start. So in the prior videos, in the comparative operators video, we saw that we can get the Boolean expression true or false by simply comparing two results. So for example, if I want to compare 45, and I can use any of the operators here. Let me just use an operator greater than, and I say population B. So I will get the result as false. So this is a Boolean expression result that I will get. Now because I have only used the comparative operators and I have compared two numbers here, so this is how I can get the results. Now if I use these operators within the if function, not only I can get the desired results, I can also amend the results basis what result we want. So for example, in the next case, instead of true and false, I want the result as 1 and 0. So let's see how we can do that. So we can do that by using the if formula. We'll write if, we'll press tab and enter the formula. Now the first condition is the logical test, as we just spoke about. So logical test, what we want to give here is, let's say population A is less than population B. So that's the logical test here. Now when we move at the next attribute, what does it want? It wants the value if true. So this is the value it wants when the result is true. So let's say we want the value as 1 if it is true, and if the logical test fails, we want the value as 0. So it completes the attributes here that are required in the formula. Now we can close the formula and we can say enter. Now you can see it has given me 1 because 45 is less than 88. So that's the correct result here. Now similarly, in the next scenario, I don't want the result as 1 or 0. Instead, I want the result to display as pass or fail. So let's see how we can do that. Again, we will be using if condition. We'll type if, we'll enter the formula with a tab. We'll say the logical test. So logical test, we can simply say 45 is less than population A is less than population B. So that is the logical test that we can have. Now what's the value that we want if the test pass, or if the test is true? We want the value as pass. Now we will use double quotes and write pass. And what's the next attribute? It is asking what is the value if it is false. So we want the value as fail if the logical test is not true. So we will again use double quote and we will say fail, and we will close the formula. We will say enter. Now you can see the result is achieved as pass. Now one thing to notice here, in the earlier formula I did not use any double quotes while giving the value at pass or value at fail. That is because the values were numbers. So if the values are numbers, I don't need to use any double quotes. However, if you're giving a value as text, you need to use a double quote, because Excel does not recognize the text unless you specify within the double quotes there. So that's how it treats it. Now in the next condition, I want the result as pass or fail, but I want the result to show as capital pass or capital fail. So how we can do that? We'll use the if condition again. We'll enter the formula with if. It's asking the logical test. So let's say the logical test, we are saying population A is equal to population B. Now this is the logical test. What is the value if true? Now the value of true in the earlier case was pass, but now we want to give the value as capital pass. So what we can do here, we can use another formula in this, saying upper, and we can give we already have the pass written in this cell. We can use this pass, and that's how we can say the value that we want if the logical test is true. Similarly, the value if the logical test is false, we can again use the upper formula, and the text here that we can give is fail, and that's the value that we want as false. Now we can close the formula, and you can see it has given me the result as capital fail. Now if you noticed, we have not used the double quotes here while giving the pass or fail, because we have used the upper formula here, and the upper formula is a text formula, so it only recognizes the text entry. Hence we do not need to use double quote here, and we have entered the text only here, so it will work fine. So that's the reason we have not used any double quotes here. However, here we straight away given the pass and fail as text, and that's the reason we've needed to use the double quotes here. So that's how you can get the desired results using the logical test. Now one more scenario. Now in this condition, we want to test the logical conditions here, and once we have test, we need to perform an operation. So how we can do that? So we will say if, we will enter the formula, and it's seeing the logical test. So let's say population B is greater than population A, and what is the value if it is true? So let's say if the value is true, we are giving it 0. And what if the value is false? Now if the value is false, I want the results to have a sum of both the populations. So how I can do that? I will sum population B plus I can sum population A. You can do it in any order. Now I can close the formula and I can say enter. Now you can see it has given me 0 since the condition was true here. Now if I want to change this and I make it less than and say enter, you can see the result is 133, which is basically the sum of population A and population B. So in this scenario, not only it has tested the logical condition here, also it has performed an operation basis the result. If the result is true, it has added both the population. If the result is false, it has given 0. So that is how we can use the if function, and we can get, once the logical test has been done, basis the result whether it is pass or fail, we can give our desired value, what we want to give at pass or what we want to give at fail. So it can be a desired value, it can be certain further operations that we want to have. So this is how we can achieve it. So these two bottom conditions, it's not a simple if condition. We have used another formula or an operation. So in this condition it becomes a nested if. So this we are going to see in the further videos. So it's a nested if formula here. So that's how we use the if condition here. And the thing to remember here, the if condition is applicable only when we are testing one logical test here. Now we are also trying to cover another variant of the if function, and that is the ifs function. So the if function with a small s here. So there's a slight change in the logic or the working or the structure of the formula here. So instead, we can see in the initial formula, it only tested one logical condition here, and basis that logical condition, at the same time, it wanted to give you the value at pass and it wanted to give you the value at fails. However, in the variant of ifs formula here, it has multiple conditions. So what it does, it will do a logical test for one condition and it will give you the value at true, whatever the value is there. Then it will again test the logical condition 2. Then it will give the value that is true basis the second logical condition, and so if and so on. It will keep on testing the logical condition and it will keep on giving you the value at true. Or also you can put here whatever the value you want if the logical test meets or does not meets. So that's how it works. So basically you can use multiple conditions here and you can give what the value you want if the logical test meets or it does not meets. Okay, so let's go and see it, the example in a data here. So I have a simple data of few employees and the sales that they have done. So I have a condition that if the employee has done sales more than 20 sales, he is eligible for the bonus. So I can use that, I can use the if condition here and I can check that eligibility in here. So I'll give a logical test. I'll check if the sales is greater than 20 and I will say eligible. I'll use double quotes and I'll say eligible, and if it is less than 20, I'll use double quotes and I'll say not. Let me just close it. and I can drag it down. So that's the eligibility criteria that I've attained here. So the first scenario is something that we can achieve directly with the if function. Now if I want a further addition of this condition, is basically I want to also calculate what is the bonus that they want to have. Now I also want to have a condition where I want to check what is the exact bonus that the company will need to give them. So here is the situation where I need to use multiple conditions and I need to check multiple logical tests here. I've kept three scenarios. Scenario 1 is when the sales is greater than 40, the employee will get a bonus of 5,000. When the sale is greater than 20, the employee will get a bonus of 2,500. And if the sale is less than 20, employee will not get any bonus. So let's see how we can incorporate that. Now this time we are using the ifs function because we have multiple logical tests here. So let's enter here, we'll say tab, and let's enter the first logical condition. We are saying the sales, that's cell AA19, and we are saying the sales is greater than 40, and the value of true for the first condition, we are saying the bonus should be 5,000. Now we move to the second logical test here, and we say if the sales is greater than 20 and the value of true, we are saying the bonus that company needs to give is 2,500. And then finally we go to the logical test 3, and we are saying AA19 is less than 20 and the value that we want to have with at this logical test is 0. So these are the three conditions that we are checking in this particular formula here. We'll close down the formula and we'll say enter. We'll drag down the formula here and we'll see the results here. So as you can see here, we are only getting the results wherever the bonus is eligible. And what is the eligible bonus? We have arrived at that as well, basis the three conditions that we have set in the formula. So this is the use case of if else, where we are testing multiple logical conditions, and at each logical conditions we are giving the value that needs to be attached to that result. So this is how we can use the IFS function. It's a variant of the logical function if, with the only difference that instead of single condition we are using multiple conditions here. Now we can also do a small formatting here. We can select this and we can use a conditional formatting, and we can say highlight the cells which have the word eligible, and we can give a color as green and say OK. Now I can see it has clearly highlighted the employees where it's eligible. So that's a simple conditional formatting that you can additionally add along with this if formula. So that's the way you can use the if formula with multiple condition, or you can use the if formula with single condition. So that's all we have in the if function here. We'll cover more complex scenarios around the if formula in the coming videos. Thanks.